I found this hand-sized stone lion carving at a thrift shop in Australia for just $3. It's black and brown, very heavy for its size at nearly a kilogram, and it even has detailed anatomy carved on the bottom. I've searched online for hours with no match. Does anyone know what it is? This is a Shona stone sculpture, carved by artisans from the Shona people of Zimbabwe. The Shona sculpture movement gained international recognition in the 1960s, and the carvings are typically made from dense local stones like serpentine, verdite, springstone, or cobalt stone, which is exactly why your piece feels so heavy for its size. Each sculpture is hand-carved using chisels and then polished with wax and heat to bring out the natural color variations in the stone. Animals, especially lions and elephants, are common subjects. Authentic pieces are often signed on the bottom by the artist, so check for an engraved name. You may have found a genuine piece of African art for a bargain. I bought this at a flea market in Indonesia for less than $1. It's a tiny gadget, about 1 inch across, fully cast in clear resin, with a button battery and electronic components visible inside. It has a silicone suction cup on the bottom and came in a custom padded case. The seller had no idea what it was. Does anyone know? This is a Nissan Synchro Eye Flash Slave, a photography accessory made by the Japanese company Nissan. It's used for triggering an off-camera flash unit. Here's how it works. The device contains a small photo sensor that detects the burst of light from your main on-camera flash. When it sees that flash, it instantly fires a secondary flash unit attached to it, allowing photographers to create more complex lighting setups without using wired triggers. The suction cup lets you mount it on any smooth surface, and the resin casing makes it durable and waterproof for studio use. What are these heavy metal pieces found in the woods? Each one is about 8 feet long and made of solid metal. I thought they might be car-related, but I really can't tell. Does anyone know what they are? These are forklift tines, also called forklift forks or blades. They're the L-shaped lifting arms that slide onto the carriage of a forklift truck. Standard tines are typically 42 to 48 inches long, but extended versions running 6 to 8 feet are used for handling oversized loads like lumber, pipe, or large crates. They're forged from high-strength alloy steel to support thousands of pounds without bending. The hook at the top engages a bar on the forklift carriage, while the heel bears the weight. When tines wear out or get damaged, they're often discarded, which is likely how these ended up abandoned in the woods. I picked this up at a second-hand store in the Netherlands. It's a wooden cabinet with a mirrored door, and behind that door is a strange megaphone-shaped hole. The top lifts up to reveal a glass plate and what looks like a pipe. It even came with a small round brush with green velvet on it. Does anyone know what it is? This object is known as an antique gramophone cabinet, likely from the 1910s or 1920s, with the internal mechanism removed. The megaphone-shaped hole behind the door is the amplifying horn, which projected sound from the needle outward. The glass plate on top would have supported the turntable, and the pipe is part of the tone arm assembly. That little velvet brush is a record cleaner, used to wipe dust from shellac discs before playing. Cabinet models like these from makers such as Victor and his Master's Voice were popular home furniture pieces before electric record players took over in the 1930s. I found this in the fridge of a concert hall and bar, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't belong there. It's made of black plastic with a rubber pad in the middle, and there are slots on the sides that look like they're for attaching something on top. Any ideas? This is a mounting bracket for a Bosch LB20 series loudspeaker. The rubber pad in the center acts as a vibration dampener, preventing the speaker from rattling against the bracket when it produces sound. The side slots are designed to lock onto the matching tabs on the speaker housing, allowing the unit to clip securely into place. These mounts are typically installed on ceilings or walls in venues, restaurants, and conference rooms for distributed audio systems. Given that you found it in a concert hall, someone likely removed it during maintenance and stashed it in the fridge as a joke or by accident. I picked this up at a junk shop a while back. It's about 1 inch tall with a tiger carved on the side and what might be a leaf or fish on top. Inside is a white substance that smells floral and reminds me of my great-grandmother's vanity. Any idea what it is? This is a solid perfume jar, also called a perfume cream or perfume paste container. These small carved vessels were popular in the 1960s and 1970s, often sold in import shops and so-called hippie boutiques across America. The white substance inside is a waxy base, usually beeswax or jojoba, infused with fragrance oils. You apply it by rubbing a fingertip into the paste and dabbing it onto pulse points. The carved soapstone or resin containers were typically imported from India or China, and the floral scent you're noticing is likely jasmine, sandalwood, or patchouli, which were the dominant fragrances of that era. I found this heavy metal clamp in an old garage, and I can't figure out what it does. It doesn't open very wide, and it attaches to a workbench with a thumb screw. Does anyone know what it is? This is a handsaw vise, a specialized tool used for maintaining handsaws. Designs like this date back to the mid-1800s, with popular models made by Diston and Stanley well into the early 1900s. You clamp the saw blade between the long, narrow jaws with the teeth pointing up, which holds the blade rigid and prevents vibration. Then, using a triangular file, you sharpen each tooth and use a separate tool called a saw set to bend alternating teeth slightly outward. This creates the kerf that prevents the saw from binding in wood. Before disposable blades, this was essential equipment for every carpenter. What is this antique Davin electrical component? It measures about 6 by 3 by 3 inches with a metal casing and weighs around 1 pound. There's a dial on the front labeled both switch and attenuation, with many wires still soldered to it. It came from an old broadcasting gear collection. Anyone know what it is? This is a banked selector switch manufactured by the Davin Company of Newark, New Jersey, which was a major supplier of precision audio components from the 1930s through the 1950s. It works by rotating a shaft that connects multiple wafer-style contacts simultaneously, allowing an operator to switch between preset audio sources or attenuation levels with a single dial movement. In radio broadcast studios, these were installed in control panels to select between microphones, turntables, or network feeds. The attenuation marking indicates it could also adjust signal levels in calibrated steps, typically in decibels, providing repeatable audio control before digital mixing existed. I found this on an uninhabited island beach on the Gulf Coast of Florida. We took a boat to shore and walked the edges of the island when I spotted it. It's very light but hard as a rock, almost like bone, and surprisingly symmetrical. It doesn't seem naturally occurring, but it's definitely not plastic. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a shark vertebra. Unlike most fish, sharks have skeletons made of cartilage rather than bone, but their vertebrae are reinforced with calcium salts, which is why this piece feels hard and dense like stone. Each vertebra has a distinct hourglass or spool shape with concentric rings, similar to tree rings, that scientists can actually use to estimate the shark's age. These commonly wash up on Gulf Coast beaches after a shark has died and the cartilage around the spine has decayed. The symmetry you noticed is simply the natural structure of the centrum, where the spinal cord once passed through. While cleaning out our apartment for move-out, we found this strange knob near the sink. It's plastic, black, with a white piece on the inside. We've searched everywhere, but nothing in our apartment seems to be missing it. Does anyone know what it is? Without a clearer view of the knob itself, identification is tricky. But pieces like this typically belong to plumbing fixtures or appliance controls. The black plastic exterior with a white inner sleeve is characteristic of a faucet handle adapter or a shutoff valve knob. These knobs work by rotating a stem that opens or closes a valve, controlling water flow. In apartments, replacement knobs are often left behind by maintenance crews after repairs, which explains why it appeared near the sink without an obvious source. I found this weird green plastic figure at an antique mall in Lawrence, Kansas. He's lightweight, and I can't make heads or tails of him, but he was too strange to leave behind. He lives in my car now. Does anyone know what it is? This is Phineas P. Fart, a novelty gag figure produced as part of a line of crude humor collectibles popular from the 1970s through the 1990s. These figures were typically sold at joke shops, truck stops, and novelty stores, often packaged with a card featuring a pun-heavy backstory. Phineas himself is usually depicted with an exaggerated posture and a comically grumpy face. Made from lightweight cast resin or hollow plastic, these figures had no moving parts. They were purely decorative shelf gags. Today, they show up at antique malls and estate sales as quirky reminders of 20th century novelty humor. What is this heavy metal object I found while walking an abandoned railway line in the Jura region of France near the Swiss border? The line used to run trash collection trains. It's about 1.5 meters long, has a shaped metal beam connected to a round part that once contained something rubbery and bouncy, and it's stamped, "Made in Germany." Does anyone know what it is? This appears to be a railway buffer assembly, the shock-absorbing component mounted on the ends of train cars and locomotives. The round head is the buffer face, which made contact with the buffer on the adjacent car, while the shaped beam behind it housed the spring or rubber compression element that absorbed impact forces during coupling and braking. The bouncy material you noticed inside the round housing was the rubber damping element, designed to cushion shocks of several tons. German manufacturers like Krupp and Ringfeder produced these buffers extensively for European rail networks throughout the 20th century. I came across these huge antique wooden frames, each fitted with a row of long threaded wooden pegs running through them. They're clearly handmade and look very old. The pegs screw in and out, suggesting they apply pressure to something. What were these large wooden frames built to do? These are panel clamps, used by woodworkers to glue multiple boards edge to edge into a single wide panel, like a tabletop. The boards are laid inside the frame and clamped from the two outer edges to pull the joints tight. The problem is that this side pressure causes the panel to cup or buckle upward in the middle. That's where the threaded pegs come in. Spaced along the top and bottom rails, each peg can be individually screwed down to press the boards flat at that specific point. Before power planers and jointers existed, this allowed craftsmen to glue and flatten rough-sawn lumber in a single operation, saving enormous amounts of hand-planing work. I'm remodeling an RV, and during the teardown I found this small magnet paired with a little plastic dome cap. The two pieces seem designed to work together, but I have no idea where they came from in the vehicle. Does anyone know what these are? These are components of an RV slide-out position sensor. Slide-outs are motorized room extensions that became popular in RVs starting in the early 1990s, with Newmar credited as one of the first manufacturers to popularize them. The system uses a reed switch housed inside the plastic dome, paired with the small magnet mounted on the moving slide assembly. When the slide is fully retracted, the magnet sits next to the switch and closes the circuit, telling the control panel it's safe to drive. If the slide isn't all the way in, the circuit stays open and the dashboard warning light activates to prevent damage on the road. What is this dial gauge, about 30 centimeters long, found in its original wooden box? It came from an old steam-powered factory building, and the writing on the face isn't in English. Does anyone know what it is? This is a Soviet-made manometer, which is a pressure gauge used on steam and pneumatic systems. The scale reads in kilograms force per square centimeter, the gravitational metric unit standard across the Soviet Union before the bar and Pascal became common. Here's how it works. Pressurized steam enters a curved tube inside the housing called a Bourdon tube, which straightens slightly under pressure. That tiny movement rotates a gear linkage connected to the needle on the dial. The stamp on the back, marked OTK, is the Soviet quality control mark, short for Отдел технического контроля, confirming the gauge passed factory inspection. What is this heavy, rusted steel part, weighing about 2 to 3 kilograms? It was found in a medieval village, but it doesn't look medieval at all. Any ideas what it could be? It's a fire bar from a steam engine. Most likely a steam traction engine or a locomotive. These bars were cast from iron or steel to withstand extreme heat, and several of them would be lined up side by side inside the firebox to form a grate. The grate's job is to support the burning coal while allowing air to flow up from below to feed the flames, and ashes to fall down into the ash pan. Steam traction engines were widely used for agriculture and road haulage from the 1850s through the 1920s, so finding one in an old village setting makes perfect sense. I found this in my tool stash while organizing a new toolbox. It's small and plastic with a sticky adhesive backing on one side, clearly meant to attach to a wall or surface. But the other side has these strange flexible arms. What does it actually hold? Does anyone know what it is? It's an adhesive-backed wire tie, also sold as a cable management clip or plant training tie. The two flexible arms contain a soft metal wire core wrapped in plastic, which allows them to bend and twist around objects and hold their shape. You stick the base to a wall, desk, or furniture, then wrap the arms around a bundle of cables, headphone cords, or charging cables to keep them tidy. The advantage over zip ties is that you can untwist and reuse them whenever you need to remove or rearrange the wires. Gardeners also use these to gently secure climbing plants and vines to trellises without damaging the stems. What are these brown and black sphere-shaped objects with small holes drilled into them? I picked them up at a flea market and have no idea what they are or what they're used for. The third picture shows them with a scale. Does anyone know what they are? These are bocce balls, used in the Italian long game of bocce. The small drilled holes and patterned grooves you see are not decorative. They serve as identifying marks, so each team can distinguish their balls from the opponents during play. Bocce traces back to the Roman Empire and was formalized in Italy in the 1800s. Players take turns rolling their balls toward a smaller target ball called the pallino, and the team whose ball ends up closest scores points. Older sets like these were typically made from compressed wood or composite materials before modern resin balls became standard. What is this small metal fastener I found in a studio I rent? It has a screw on one end that connects to a rod, and the other end is flat. It's very lightweight, and I can't figure out what it goes to. Does anyone know what it is? This is a pin from an electrical plug, specifically the prong portion of a rewirable mains plug. The flat end is what slides into a wall outlet to make contact with the live electrical terminals. The screw on the opposite end serves a critical function. It clamps down on the stripped copper wire from a power cord, securing it firmly so electricity can flow from the wire through the pin and into the socket. These rewirable plugs were common in the United Kingdom and Europe before molded plugs became standard in the 1990s, and they're still used today for replacement parts and custom wiring jobs. I found this small, soft plastic piece on the floor with comb-like prongs along the edge. It looks like it was screwed into something, but the prongs snapped off. I have no idea where it came from. Does anyone know what it is? It's a portion control impeller from a pet kit automatic cat feeder. This component sits inside the dispensing chamber at the bottom of the food hopper. When the feeder activates, a motor rotates the impeller, and those comb-like prongs sweep a precise volume of kibble into the bowl chute with each turn. The design ensures that each meal is the exact same size, typically measured in 10-gram increments. Because it's made of soft, silicone-style plastic to prevent jamming, the prongs are vulnerable to snapping if hard kibble gets wedged in. Replacement impellers are available directly from Pet Kit for around $10. What is this strange, collapsible, toothed tool? It has a clasp that lets the handle slip apart so the blade straightens out. The teeth aren't particularly sharp, and I'm completely puzzled about its purpose. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a dog grooming tool, specifically an undercoat rake designed for long-haired breeds. The folding mechanism makes it portable and protects the teeth during storage. When you unfold and lock the handle straight, the rounded metal teeth glide through the top coat and pull out loose, dead fur from the dense undercoat below. This is especially useful during seasonal shedding, when breeds like Huskies, Golden Retrievers, and German Shepherds blow their winter coats. The teeth are intentionally blunt to avoid cutting the skin or damaging healthy guard hairs. I found this on the Baltic Sea shore. It's slightly magnetic on one side, seems hollow, and is coated in zinc. There are no markings except for one stamp on the bottom. Does anyone know what it is? This object is known as a magnetic float from a liquid level gauge. These floats sit inside a sealed tube or tank and rise or fall with the fluid level. The magnetic side interacts with small indicator flags, or a follower, mounted on the outside of the tube. As the float moves up or down, the magnet flips the external indicators, displaying the fluid level without any electrical components or direct contact with the liquid. The zinc coating protects the steel shell from corrosion, which is why it survived its time in the sea. These are commonly used in fuel tanks, boilers, and industrial storage vessels. I found this small metal object in a 100-plus-year-old sewing box. It's about 1.5 to 2 inches in diameter, has a name and address engraved on one side, and looks like it may have been worn or carried on a chain. We're completely stumped. Does anyone know what it is? It's a personalized identification charm, often called a good luck token or vending machine ID tag. From the 1930s through the 1960s, machines made by companies like the Hammond Multigraph and later Vendadisc were installed in stores like Woolworth's and F.W. Woolworth 5 and Dimes across America. For a small coin, you could type in your name and address, and the machine would stamp it into a thin aluminum disc on the spot. People wore them on chains for good luck, or carried them as a form of personal ID, much like a modern dog tag. They were a popular novelty souvenir for decades. What is this strange setup along a highway in Quebec? Sticks wrapped in mesh are placed irregularly in the ground, surrounded by a fence and a moat, with a raised observation building in the center. Does anyone know what it is? This object is known as a research orchard, also called a provenance trial or common garden experiment. Forestry and ecology labs plant these to study how trees from different geographic origins perform under identical conditions. Each young tree is protected by a mesh tube to prevent damage from deer and rodents, and the colored flags or tags identify the seed source, often called the lineage or provenance. The moat and fencing keep larger animals out, while the central observation tower lets researchers monitor growth, survival, and phenology from above. Data from these plots help scientists understand local adaptation, climate resilience, and genetic diversity in tree populations. I found this at a Savers thrift store, and I still can't figure out what it is. It's a glass item, roughly 8.5 by 11 inches, weighs about 2 pounds, and opens like a book. It reminds me of a picture frame, but there's no slot or opening to insert anything. Does anyone know what it is? This is a decorative glass book, a common home accent piece from the 1990s. These were produced in large quantities by glassware companies and sold in department stores like JCPenney and Pier 1 during that era. The design imitates stained glass, and the object is meant to be displayed on a windowsill or shelf where sunlight can pass through the colored panels. It doesn't open to hold anything functional. The hinge is purely aesthetic, allowing the owner to angle the two panels for the best light display. I picked up this small gold container at a thrift store, and I have no idea what it's for. It has cut-out star shapes around the sides and a small opening on top. Does anyone know its purpose? This is a small oil lamp, most likely made of brass rather than gold. Designs like this draw from a long tradition of pierced metal lamps used across the Middle East, North Africa, and India for centuries. The star cutouts aren't just decorative. When the wick inside is lit, the flame projects star-shaped patterns onto the surrounding walls, creating ambient light. A small reservoir inside holds the oil, typically olive or lamp oil, and a wick is threaded through the top opening. Many of these were produced as souvenir items throughout the 20th century, though the basic design has remained essentially unchanged for hundreds of years. I found this small, clear plastic piece, about 1.5 inches long, at the bottom of my GE dishwasher after a cycle. I cleaned the filter just weeks ago, so it's new. I checked inside, but nothing looks loose. Does anyone know what it is? This is the sight glass from your dishwasher's rinse aid compartment. It's a small, transparent window mounted on the inside of the door, designed to let you visually check the rinse aid level without opening the dispenser cap. It functions through simple optics. When the reservoir is full, the window appears dark. As the liquid drops, it turns clear or light-colored. Over time, the plastic clip holding it in place can fatigue from repeated heat cycles and pop loose. You'll want to snap it back into the dispenser housing on the door to keep the indicator working. We found this rod, about 3 feet tall, hammered into the ground right against our house, just barely tucked behind the siding. Old photos confirm it wasn't there when we moved in 9 years ago. We've had contractors do various projects since then. What is it? And do we need to put it back? This is a concrete form stake. These steel rods are driven into the ground by contractors to hold wooden or metal forms in place while concrete is poured and cured for sidewalks, foundations, or slabs. They typically have pre-drilled holes along the length, allowing nails or screws to secure the forms tightly. Once the concrete sets, the stakes are supposed to be pulled out, but they're often forgotten, especially when hidden against siding. You don't need to put it back. It served its purpose during whatever pour happened on your property and was simply left behind. This was turned into our lost and found on a key ring, and hundreds of people have looked at it without a single correct guess. The long part is metal, possibly aluminum, painted black, attached to a black plastic base with a hole in it. There's a groove running down the length. Does anyone know what it is? It's a magnesium fire starter, the kind often included with survival axe kits and camping gear. Here's how it works. The black-coated bar is actually a solid block of magnesium with a ferrocerium rod embedded along one edge, which is the groove you can see. To start a fire, you scrape shavings of magnesium off the block with a knife into a small pile of tinder. Then strike the ferrocerium rod hard with the back of the blade. That throws sparks burning at around 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, igniting the magnesium shavings instantly. The hole in the base is for attaching it to a key ring or pack, keeping it handy for emergencies. What is this strange device mounted under a kitchen sink? It has 3 plastic rods that pull out telescopically with metal cores inside. The main unit seems to contain a motor, and everything is controlled by a 30-minute timer. Does anyone know what it is? It's an electric towel dryer, a common appliance in many European kitchens and bathrooms. Inside the main housing, a small heating element warms the air while a fan circulates it across the extended rods. The metal cores inside the plastic rods conduct heat efficiently, drying the damp towels hung over them in about 20 to 30 minutes. The rods are telescopic to make it easier to drape and remove towels without struggling. The 30-minute timer prevents overheating and saves energy, making it a practical solution in homes without space for a tumble dryer. I picked this up at a thrift store for $2, and I can't figure out its purpose. It's a small wooden carved horse, painted nicely, but the top of his head is completely hollowed out, like he's been lobotomized. It's too light to hold a phone or a book, and there's no hole in the base for hanging. Does anyone know what it is? This is an eyeglass holder. Novelty stands carved in the shape of animals became popular decorative items from the mid-20th century onward, particularly in the 1960s and 1970s. The hollowed cavity on top of the head is shaped to cradle a folded pair of reading glasses, with the carved ears, or mane, acting as supports to keep the frames from sliding off. The horse design makes it look like the animal is wearing the spectacles when in use, turning a simple bedside accessory into a small piece of folk art. What are these long, slim slots attached to the top of my window frames? There are 3 of them, about 18 inches long, and they slide slightly open and closed. 2 are on the fixed window, and 1 is on the crank-opened window. Does anyone know what they are? These are trickle vents. They are small, controllable openings built into the window frame that allow a continuous, low-volume flow of fresh outside air into a room, even when the window itself is closed. The slider you noticed lets you adjust the airflow or shut it completely. They became widespread after building codes, particularly in the UK starting in the 2000s, began requiring background ventilation in modern airtight homes. Without them, sealed, double-glazed windows can trap moisture, leading to condensation and mold. What is this round object made of plastic and metal? It has some markings on the surface and looks like it was designed to be turned or adjusted. Does anyone know what it came from? This is a control knob from a household sewing machine. Depending on the model, it functions as either the stitch length selector, the tension dial, or the stitch pattern selector. The markings you see correspond to numbered settings that the user rotates to. Inside the machine, the knob connects to a cam or a mechanical linkage that adjusts the feed dog timing or thread tension. Once detached from the machine body, these knobs become nearly impossible to identify without the original housing for context. I found this small metal object next to a river. It has 3 prongs, and each prong has 3 spikes coming off of it. It looks handmade. Is this used for fishing? Or is it just trash? This object is known as the Tools of Ochosi, a religious item from the Santeria faith. Ochosi is the Orisha, or deity, of hunting and justice in this Afro-Cuban tradition, which originated among the Yoruba people of West Africa. The 3-prong design typically combines symbolic representations of a crossbow, an arrow, and a hook, all tools associated with his role as a divine hunter. Practitioners place these items on altars or use them in rituals to seek guidance, protection, or justice. Finding it near a river is significant, since water locations are often used for spiritual offerings in this practice. What is this strange metal device with a white plastic part that moves up and down? I haven't tried to unscrew it yet, but I have no idea what it does or where it came from. Does anyone know what it is? This is part of a slow close cabinet hinge, also known as a soft close damper. The white plastic piece you see moving is a piston filled with hydraulic fluid or compressed air. When you push a cabinet door shut, this piston compresses slowly, absorbing the kinetic energy and preventing the door from slamming. The mechanism became widespread in residential cabinetry in the early 2000s, popularized by companies like Bloom and Hedek. It works on the same principle as a car shock absorber, just scaled down to fit inside your kitchen cabinet. I was renovating an old room and pulled up the carpet, only to find this strange green granular material embedded along the bottom of the wall. It honestly looks suspiciously like rat poison to me. Does anyone know what it is? What you're looking at is the decomposed remains of an old carpet pad. Specifically, this is a type of rubberized hair or sponge rubber underlay that was common from the 1950s through the 1970s. Over decades, the rubber binders break down and oxidize, turning into this crumbly green or yellowish granular dust. The material clings to the tack strip area and baseboards because that's where the pad was compressed against the wall. While it's not poisonous like it appears, it should still be cleaned up carefully, as the old rubber dust can contain irritants and should be vacuumed with a HEPA filter. There is a flat, circular metal disc embedded in the brick wall of my house, about the size of a fingertip. It has no threads and doesn't move, but water is slowly leaking out of it. As far as I know, there shouldn't be any pipes in that part of the wall. Does anyone know what it is? This is a capped-off pipe stub, most likely the remains of an old exterior spigot or hose bib. When homeowners remove an outdoor faucet, plumbers typically cut the supply line back and solder or thread a brass or copper cap onto the end to seal it. The flat disc you see is the face of that cap, flush with the brickwork. The fact that it's leaking is a serious warning sign. It means the cap has failed, or the line behind it was never properly drained and is now cracked. You'll want to shut off the water and call a plumber, because that pipe is actively pushing water into your wall cavity. What is this object, shaped like a key, but with an unusually large and ornate brass handle? The shaft and bit at the end look like a standard skeleton key, but the bow at the top is far heavier and more decorative than anything you'd carry on a key ring. What does it actually open? This is a wardrobe or cabinet key, sometimes called a furniture key. Unlike door keys meant to be pocketed, these were designed to live in the lock itself, often left dangling from the keyhole as a decorative feature. The oversized brass bow served two purposes. It provided enough leverage to easily turn the simple warded lock mechanism, and it acted as ornamentation, matching the brass hardware on antique armoires, secretaries, and display cabinets. These were especially common on European furniture from the 18th and 19th centuries. What are these comically long scissors? They appear to be a regular pair of shears, but stretched out way beyond normal size. There are no markings or brand names anywhere on them. Does anyone know what they are? These are paper hanging shears, also known as wallpaper scissors. Tools like these have been used by paper hangers and decorators since at least the 1800s, with companies like Wyss and Heinisch producing professional models from the 1860s onward. The extra-long blades, often 12 to 14 inches, allow the user to make one long, clean cut across a full width of wallpaper or wrapping paper in a single stroke. This prevents the jagged edges you would get from multiple shorter cuts. Professionals still prefer them today for hanging traditional wallpaper. Someone gave me these small terracotta heads after finding them while hiking in the mountains of Kyushu, Japan. They're about 2 inches long, with a hole at the top of the head and a slot running along the chin. Something rattles inside. What were they used for, and how old might they be? These objects are known as haniwa, traditional Japanese tomb sculptures. Haniwa were produced during the Kofun period, which spans roughly 300 to 552 CE, making authentic examples over 1,500 years old. They were placed on top of and around burial mounds, called kofun, for high-ranking individuals. The figure served both a ceremonial and a practical purpose, marking the boundaries of the sacred site and possibly housing the spirit of the deceased. The rattling sound inside is typical, as they were built hollow using the coil method to survive firing in the kiln. The examples you have are likely small souvenir reproductions, as genuine haniwa are protected cultural property in Japan. I was digging through my sewing kit and found these strange white plastic pieces. They are about 2¼ inches wide, identical on both sides, with a little notch cut into one edge. They don't seem to be for sewing at all. Does anyone know what they are? These are pad holders for a TINS unit, which stands for transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation. TINS therapy was first commercialized in the 1970s, after a patent by Dr. C. Norman Shealy in 1974. And it works by sending small electrical pulses through adhesive electrode pads placed on the skin to block pain signals. These plastic discs act as storage covers, protecting the sticky gel surface of the electrodes between uses so they stay clean and reusable. The small notch on the side is designed to let the electrode lead wire hang off without bending. Brands like Omron still ship similar holders with their replacement pads today. What are these two tall, white metal poles in Ellensburg, Washington? They form a V shape, connect at the top, stand slightly taller than the nearby telephone poles, and they're partially rusted. They sit in an empty lot, about 100 feet from a gas station. Does anyone know what this is? This is a retired Conoco gas station signpost. Conoco, short for Continental Oil Company, was founded in 1875 and became famous for its tall roadside pylon signs in the mid-20th century. The signature design featured two angled steel poles meeting at the top to support a large, illuminated logo that could be seen by drivers from a long distance down the highway. When a station closes or rebrands, the sign panel itself is usually removed first because it carries the trademark. But the heavy structural posts are often left behind because demolition is expensive. The empty lot location and proximity to a current gas station strongly support this being the skeleton of a former Conoco station. I found this medium-sized silver metal circle, and I can't figure out where it came from. It has the text Auking Gush stamped on it, along with a heart shape containing the letters L, V, T, and Y inside. I placed my phone next to it for scale. Does anyone know what it is? This is a decorative brand charm from an inexpensive handbag or tote, most likely sold by a third-party seller on Amazon, Temu, or Shein. Aquangush is a typical example of the randomly generated brand names used by overseas dropshipping companies to trademark their listings on these platforms. The charm itself is a zipper pull or hanging tag attached to the bag by a small chain or leather strap, designed to mimic the logo medallions found on luxury brands. They typically fall off because the jump ring connecting them is made of soft pot metal. If someone in the house recently bought a purse online, this almost certainly came off of it. I was hiking deep in the woods and found this cement post along what looks like an old roadbed. It stands about knee height and has the letters SRD and R/W carved into it. Does anyone know what this is? This is a state property line marker, specifically a right-of-way boundary post. SRD stands for State Road Department, which was the common agency name used in many states from the early 1900s through the 1970s before being renamed to Department of Transportation. R/W stands for right-of-way, meaning the strip of land legally owned or controlled by the state for road construction and maintenance. Surveyors place these concrete monuments at regular intervals along the edges of public roads to mark where state property ended and private land began. Since you found yours along an abandoned roadbed, there are almost certainly more of these spaced out along the route if you follow the old path. What is this small mushroom-shaped object? It has a wooden stem, fabric covering, and a dense yarn-wrapped ring protruding from the side. Does anyone know what it is? This is a decorative napkin ring, likely handmade or from a craft collection. The mushroom shape serves as a stand or display, while the yarn-wrapped ring on the side is the functional part, sized to hold a rolled cloth napkin. Napkin rings became popular in mid-19th century Europe as a way for families to identify their personal napkins between washings, since laundry was infrequent. Handcrafted versions like this one, combining wood, fabric, and fiber arts, were especially common in the 1960s and 1970s as part of the macrame and folk craft revival. What is this small metal tube, about 4 inches long, with an adjustable wire guide ring on the side? It was found among a collection of sewing equipment, and the wire piece looks like it could feed a strand of something through. Does anyone know what it is? This is part of a punch needle. Punch needles have been used for embroidery and rug hooking since the 1800s, with major patents filed in the United States in the 1880s by inventors like John B. Hinman. Here is how it works. You thread yarn or thick floss through the hollow tube, and the adjustable guide controls the loop length on the back of the fabric. When you push the needle through stretched cloth, it leaves a looped stitch on the other side, building up a textured design row by row. The hook at the tip helps catch and pull the thread cleanly through the weave. What is this massive piece of equipment taking up almost an entire city block in downtown Chicago? It's huge, with steel sections laid out on the street. Does anyone know what it is? It's a tower crane being assembled on site. Tower cranes arrive at construction sites in pieces by truck because they are far too tall to transport in one unit. Here's how it works. A smaller mobile crane lifts the base sections into place. Then the tower self-climbs upward as more mast sections are inserted from below using a hydraulic climbing frame. Once the horizontal jib and counterweights are attached, the crane can lift several tons of material hundreds of feet into the air. The full assembly process typically takes a few days and requires closing nearby streets, which is why it occupies so much space. What is this heavy metal block with a strange, abrasive, file-like surface? It looks too rough to be a regular file, but too flat to be a grinder. Does anyone know what it is? This object is known as a lapping plate. It's a precision tool used in metalworking and optics to create an extremely flat surface on another object. Here's how it works. You place the workpiece on top of the plate, add a slurry of abrasive particles and oil, and then rub the piece across the textured surface in a figure-8 pattern. The tiny grooves you see hold the abrasive grit in place, which slowly shaves microscopic amounts of material off the workpiece. Machinists use these to finish gauge blocks, valve seats, and other parts that need to be flat within millionths of an inch. I just opened a shoebox with brand new shoes, and these hard plastic hollow tubes were rattling around inside. They're sturdy, kind of like thick straws. What are they for? These are shoe shaper inserts, sometimes called shoe form tubes. Manufacturers place them inside the toe box of new shoes during shipping and storage to help the shoe hold its intended shape. Without them, the upper material, especially on sneakers and dress shoes, can collapse, crease, or deform under the weight of stacked boxes during transport. The hollow tube design is lightweight, but rigid enough to push outward against the leather or fabric. Once you buy the shoes, you can toss them or keep them inside the shoes in your closet to prevent creasing over time. This small white plastic object is mounted on the wall of my hallway near my front door. It has 3 dark circular marks on it. The bottom is flush to the wall, and the top curves outward. It wobbles when I push it. My flat was built in 2014. Does anyone know what it is? It's a wall-mounted mail and key organizer made by the Umbra brand, likely the Magnetar or Estilo model. The curved upper portion creates a pocket where you can slide in letters, bills, or small papers to keep them off your countertops. The 3 dark circles you see are embedded magnets designed to hold your keys in place when you walk in the door. The slight wobble you feel is normal. It's just the flexibility of the plastic. Umbra is a Canadian design company known for these minimalist household organizers, and this type of fixture became very popular in new builds around 2014. What is this odd little device sitting on a desk in an office scene from the early 2000s? It looks like a small balance with a pointer and a numbered dial, but it seems to be missing a tray or platform on top. Does anyone know what it is? It's a postal letter scale, a staple of office desks before digital postage became standard. The device works on a simple spring balance principle. When you place an envelope on the platform, the weight compresses an internal spring, which moves a pointer across a calibrated dial showing the weight in ounces or grams. Office workers use this reading to apply the correct amount of postage stamps before mailing. The one in the screenshot is missing its top tray, which is why it looks incomplete. These scales were manufactured by companies like Salter and Pelouse from the late 1800s through the early 2000s, when electronic scales finally replaced them. This wooden piece called to me at Goodwill. It's about 19 by 7.5 inches with ornate carved decoration. There's a metal picture hanging fixture on the back at the top, and a horizontal wooden bar mounted toward the bottom. Does anyone know what it is? This is a decorative hand towel or dish rag holder, a common piece of Victorian and early 20th century kitchen and washroom decor. The horizontal bar at the bottom is sized perfectly to drape a small linen or terry towel for drying. The metal hanger on the back allows it to mount flush against a wall like a picture frame. These ornate wooden holders were often hand-carved or machine-pressed with floral and scroll patterns, and they were especially popular between 1890 and 1940 as functional folk art in American homes. What are these metal structures sitting on a building's roof? They look somewhat janky, with counterweights on the back end and slack wires running off them. They rest on wooden skids and are only located in one corner of the roof. A Google Lens search suggested a davit system, but they don't quite match. Does anyone know what they are? These are swing stage scaffolding anchorages, also called outrigger beams or counterweighted suspension rigs. They function as the support points for the suspended platforms that window washers and facade workers use on the sides of tall buildings. The horizontal beam extends past the roof edge, and the heavy weights on the back end counterbalance the load hanging off the front. The slack wires you see are the suspension cables that drop down to the swing stage platform below. Workers then use motorized hoists called traction climbers to raise and lower themselves along those cables. What is this black steel tool with an angled rest? It has two sharpened blades about half an inch apart and parallel to each other. They aren't independently adjustable, but they rotate up and down together when you twist the knurled knob. It's sitting on a piece of 1.5-inch angle iron for scale. Does anyone know what it is? This is an adjustable thread repair tool, sometimes called a thread chaser or thread restorer. It works by clamping the two hardened cutting blades around a damaged bolt or threaded rod. As you rotate the tool along the shaft, the parallel blades follow and recut the existing thread profile, cleaning up burrs, rust, or crushed sections. The knurled knob adjusts how deeply the blades engage, allowing the same tool to handle a range of thread diameters. Unlike a die, which cuts new threads, this tool is designed only to restore existing ones without removing extra material. This thing has been hiding in a bathroom cabinet for who knows how long. It's painted white metal, sturdy, and not springy at all. My husband and I are sure it doesn't belong to either of us. Google image search said it was a bed lever handle, but none of the pictures matched the shape. Does anyone know what it is? This is a gutter hook from a giant spiderweb decoration sold by Spirit Halloween. The curved end is designed to slip over the edge of a house gutter or roof line, anchoring the hook in place. The straight section then provides an attachment point where you clip on the corner of a large, stretchable spiderweb, letting the decoration hang down across the front of the house. Because the hook is purpose-built for a single, seasonal product, it tends to get separated from the original packaging and ends up rattling around in drawers and cabinets long after the web itself is gone. I ordered some pins from an online stationery shop, and they threw this in as a free gift. It's a small wooden propeller with a separate thin stick. I've Googled it, but I can't figure out what it is. Does anyone know? What you have is a bamboo copter, also known as a bamboo dragonfly or Chinese top. This flying toy originated in China around 400 BC, making it one of the earliest examples of a rotary wing aircraft. To use it, you insert the stick into the hole in the center of the propeller, then spin the stick rapidly between your palms before releasing. The angled blades push air downward, generating lift that sends the propeller flying several feet into the air. Sir George Cayley actually studied this toy in 1792, and it directly influenced the development of the modern helicopter. I found these small, hard, gray, pea-sized things scattered in my backyard dirt. There are quite a few of them, and I don't recall using anything that contained these. What are they? These are regranulated polypropylene pellets, also called nurdles. They're the raw material used in plastic manufacturing, produced when recycled plastic is melted down, extruded, and chopped into uniform beads. Factories then melt these pellets again to mold them into finished products like bottles, containers, and automotive parts. They commonly end up in soil through industrial spills, shipping container leaks, or contaminated compost. Unfortunately, nurdles are now one of the most widespread microplastic pollutants on Earth, with billions ending up in waterways and beaches every year. I found this in the yard at an Airbnb in Texas, just sitting on the ground. It's about 4 inches long, looks a bit like a letter opener, but the working end is rounded rather than flat. It's a lightweight metal, possibly pewter. Reverse image search suggested letter opener, but that doesn't seem right. Does anyone know what it is? This is a cheese marker, used on charcuterie boards to label different types of cheese. The flat, rounded end is designed to be written on with a chalk marker or wax pencil, so hosts can identify each cheese for their guests, things like brie, Gouda, or Manchego. The pointed end gets stuck into the cheese itself. Many of these markers are actually handcrafted from old silverware, where artisans flatten the bowls of antique spoons or forks using a hammer and anvil. That explains the pewter-like weight and the slightly irregular shape you're seeing. They became especially popular on Etsy and at craft fairs in the 2010s. What is this small plastic and black rubber piece I found on my kitchen floor? It's a bit smaller than my palm, and I have no idea where it came from or what it belongs to. Does anyone recognize this? This is the end cap from a cheese grater or box-style slicer. Most modern graters, like those made by OXO or Microplane starting in the early 2000s, feature a removable rubber and plastic foot on the bottom. It works by gripping the countertop or bowl rim through friction, keeping the grater stable while you apply downward pressure. The soft rubber prevents slipping on smooth surfaces, while the plastic frame snaps onto the metal blade housing. When it pops off during washing, it often gets separated and ends up looking like a complete mystery. What are these strange, cage-like metal structures suspended over a highway in Phoenix, Arizona? There are 3 of them mounted on what looks like a pedestrian bridge crossing the freeway. Any ideas what they could be? These are public art installations attached to a pedestrian overpass. Phoenix has invested heavily in highway art through its Percent for Art program, established in 1986, which dedicates 1% of city construction budgets to public art. Many bridges along Interstate 10 and Loop 202 feature decorative metal sculptures designed by commissioned artists. The cage-like forms are purely aesthetic, often referencing desert flora, geometric patterns, or regional culture. They're engineered to withstand high winds and are lit at night to enhance the visual experience for drivers passing below. What is this piece of foam I found? It measures 35 centimeters long by 5 centimeters tall, and it doesn't appear to be a cord hider since there's no groove cut into it. Does anyone know what this is for? This is a drawer insert designed to organize spice jars. It works by sitting flat inside a kitchen drawer, where the soft foam material creates friction against the bottoms of spice containers. This prevents the jars from sliding and rolling around every time you open or close the drawer. Some versions, like those sold by container organization brands starting in the 2010s, come in strips you can cut to fit your specific drawer dimensions. The simple foam design is preferred over rigid plastic racks because it accommodates jars of different sizes and shapes, making it useful for spices, essential oils, or small bottles. I was digging around in the garden of my old Midwestern house when I uncovered this incredibly heavy cast iron object. It has gears, a large screw mechanism, and what looks like a crank handle mount. Does anyone know what it is? This object is known as an antique cider press, likely manufactured between 1870 and 1920. Companies like the Hocking Valley Manufacturing Company in Lancaster, Ohio, produced thousands of these for rural American households. The mechanism works in 2 stages. First, apples are fed into a hopper where a geared grinding wheel shreds them into pulp. Then, the pulp is loaded into a slatted barrel, and the large central screw is cranked down, compressing the mash and forcing fresh juice out through the slats. A single press could produce several gallons of cider per hour, which was a critical winter beverage before refrigeration. I found 4 of these heavy black metal pieces in the shed left behind by the previous owner of my property. Each one has a swivel mechanism and looks like sturdy hardware, but I have no idea what they're meant for. Should I donate them or use them? Does anyone know what it is? What you have is a gate building kit, specifically the corner bracket and anti-sag hardware set. Brands like Adjust-A-Gate and Homax sell these to convert standard fence boards into a functional swinging gate. Each bracket clamps onto the corners of the wooden frame, and the swivel feature allows you to attach diagonal tension rods that prevent the gate from sagging over time, which is the most common failure point for wooden gates. With 4 brackets, you have exactly enough hardware to build one complete gate up to about 6 feet wide. Definitely worth keeping if you have any fencing on the property. Which of these items surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. For more unknown items, check out the other videos on our channel. Hit like and subscribe.